Hi, I'm Syndia. If you're new here, I'm on a quest to learn to paint minimal landscapes. I think they're beautiful. I like minimalism because it makes me feel calm, but I have a hard time achieving it. If you hear a little noise, my puppy is playing with a toy. Let me give you an example. This artist I found on Instagram a few years ago. I love his paintings. Love his paintings so much. I like the way he uses colors. I like how with just a few brush strokes he just makes the image appear, and he doesn't add more than necessary for the painting to look beautiful. That's what I'm looking for in my own practice when it comes to minimal landscapes, and I can't get there. So if you're waiting for me to give you a perfect tutorial on minimal landscapes, you're not at the right spot. But if you like art vlogs, super cozy art vlogs, and you like seeing the process of an artist trying to figure things out, doing a bunch of failed attempts and then having some wins sometimes, you're at the right spot. Welcome, subscribe. Like I said, I really love his paintings. Let me give you specific examples of things that I like and why I like it. In this one, I like the use of color. The sky is bright purple and the fields are orange. Purple and orange goes well together, but it's so easy to put those two colors together and have an image that is super overwhelming if those colors are oversaturated. It feels very saturated, but at the same time, it really works. And if you look at all the brush strokes, giving like the tree line and buildings and the fields in the background, everything is done so minimally, so beautifully. There's an effortless kind of feeling to the paintings that I really can't get to. It looks so easy to do, but I promise you it's not. I've tried so many times and I really can't get there. Giving you another example. I'm looking for another painting that I really like. Well, I love all of his paintings, to be quite honest, but okay, this one. The way he creates those trees with just a few very dainty lines and a couple dabs for leaves. Obviously, it's an autumn painting at dusk, most probably, but nothing is too much, nothing is too overpowering. But if I were to try something like this, I feel like the painting would look unfinished. It wouldn't look intentionally minimalistic, and it wouldn't look like a complete work of art. But if I look at this, I'm thinking how gorgeous, first of all, but also how easy. Few strokes here and there and it's done, but it's deceptively hard. I could go on because he's got so many beautiful paintings. I can't pick my favorite because there's so many of them, but this is where I'm at. I've tried doing minimal landscapes, but for some reason it doesn't come out minimal for me. Let me show you examples so that you can see what I'm trying to do and my failed attempts. By the way, I'm gonna get to painting at some point. I just wanted to chat to you, see my, like where I'm at before I start painting, in case you've never been on this channel before. Here's a good example of a failed attempt. I had done small versions of this in oil pastel. I've talked about this before. In the small version, it works beautifully well. It looks like a finished painting. It's very minimal, the feeling that I get from it is very calming. It's everything I want. The color palette's there, not too much texture, not too many things. I love it. When I try to reproduce it in a larger format, this might be like a 24 by 24 maybe. It looks pretty much the same or close to, but it doesn't look finished here. Because obviously when you go bigger, I guess you have to put in more details for it to be balanced. I don't even know, because I'm not getting it. So who am I to say what I'm doing wrong? I guess I'm gonna have to do a lot of trial and error. But on the large format it doesn't work, on the small format it works. So I'm good here, but I'm not really good on canvas with this painting. These are all failed attempts. Let me show you. I feel like the color palettes are wrong. Everything's too saturated. Here I was able to get more subtlety in the sky, which I love, but everything here is far from minimal. Way too much texture. I can't say that I dislike this painting, but I can't say that it's a minimal landscape. It's pretty busy. This looks okay to me, but again, color saturation is too much there, so much texture on the sky, like a lot of things. There's a lot of things going on here. In this one, I tried to go drastically minimal in the texture and in my brush strokes, but somehow it doesn't work. It's not very neat, and color saturation, I think, again, is a problem. This is a big old mess. And I gave up on this one. Way too much texture, too much saturation. All right, here, I like the general feeling of this painting. There's not too many things. This to me is minimal. I don't like the color palette, but it's getting closer to what I want. Except that I painted this from imagination. So it's not a place that I know or that I care about. And what I really want to do is paint landscapes of where I was born in the countryside of Eastern Quebec. There's a lot of really beautiful, meaningful landscapes there that I want to capture in a minimal style, a style that's gonna make me feel calm, at peace, full of joy. It's a quest. I'll give you one example of something that I did that was getting pretty close to what I want. I created these two landscapes together. It's from my grandpa's farm. I tried different techniques. This one is a lot more moody. It was a dripping technique, and I can't say that this is minimal at all. So much is going on. I like the effect, but it's not what I was aiming for. So I did a second one that was a lot more minimal, and I feel like I got closer to what I wanted. The colors are a lot less punchy, even though they're still pretty punchy, but they're less dark. I love the horizon line and the trees. Even though there's this texture in the foreground, I don't really mind it because it doesn't try to mimic foliage. It's just like a dripping texture. So this is pretty close. I did these two landscapes not too long ago, and I don't know, I kind of like the result, but again, it's not what I'm looking for. I think it's interesting. The color palette is okay, I would say, but it feels like this painting doesn't know what it wants to be, because there's a lot of texture in the foreground trying to really mimic or read like real foliage. So is it trying to be more figurative and realistic, or is it trying to be held back and minimalist? Lately, in my last attempt, I went like boldly minimalist, and this I did a long time ago, but I tried a few more times. Didn't work. Going forward, I want to keep in mind that there's many different aspects to this minimalism that I'm running after. There's different dials that I can turn up or down when it comes to this. There's the color palette. I can have it super saturated or really desaturated, very dark, very light. So if I want a calm, airy, flowy minimal color palette, I have to go lighter, a lot lighter, and a lot more like neutralized color tone. So adding a bit of black or whatever to get the colors to be a little grayish, if you will, more neutral than a saturated out of the tube color. So color is one dial. The other dial is obviously the subject matter. If there's a lot of elements in a composition to begin with, it's going to be hard to make it be very minimalist in the end. So either taking stuff out of the reference photo or rendering it with one brush stroke, you know, like not too many elements is another aspect. And the third dial is texture. The more texture, the less minimalist. And are you playing the minimalist drinking game right now? You must be drunk. I mean, like texture, the more texture, the busier it'll get and the further from what I'm looking for. So I can turn up one dial if I want to, like I can have more saturated colors if I keep everything else pretty dim. But I haven't found the balance basically, because if all the dials are turned to like 0 or 1, I'm gonna get something like this. In theory, it's minimal, but in reality, in real life, it doesn't look like much. It's boring and unfinished. But in looking at all these, I pulled everything out because I wanted to talk to you about my reasoning frame of mind, where I was at. And it forced me to kind of look at what I had done, because I did a whole bunch of them in the last few years. And I'm realizing that a lot of my problem comes from colors that are too dark, I think. For what I'm looking for or what I like, I think I would like lighter shades of everything. Unless I'm doing a night scene, obviously. At night, things like we're gonna get like purples and blues that are gonna be more punchy. But I could probably make things more pastel-y and more neutralized. One thing that I don't do is to neutralize my colors, because let me confess something to you. I hate mixing paint. Like, I hate color mixing. If I could just buy the perfect shades already mixed, I would do it, because it's so hard to mix the right shade of something you want, and then you run out. And in acrylic, one of the biggest hurdle for me is the fact that it dries so much darker than what it is when it's wet. So it's really hard to figure out what it's going to look like in the end. And I don't think I really enjoy the process of coming up with my own colors. So either I buy more paint tubes, or I find a way to try to enjoy mixing colors, or like pick only a very limited amount of colors that I know how to mix and start with that instead of getting overwhelmed. I'm not sure what the solution is. I'm gonna have to figure that out. So too saturated, too dark colors is one of my problems, because I was able to get some of the rest down, you know, less texture and less detailed brush strokes. I was able to get it in a few instances. Like, I like the way I did these trees. I've mentioned that in the past. Very much dislike this, but the trees here, I like it. Color is hard. All right, I'm gonna stop talking and start painting. I'll pick some kind, I don't know if, should I do a fourth attempt at this? Maybe I'm gonna try to do that. Here's the plan. I had a talk with David the other day. Let me show you. This background, if you're new here, it's my new painting series called True Colors. I just completed it a few weeks back. All the paintings are on my website. If you're curious, you can go and check it out. I just displayed them because I'm really happy that it's finally done and I'm excited about them. I want to live with them for a while, but I'm exploring new things right now because I'm done with this. I want to move on to other things, to like get inspired and try new things just for fun, you know? Variety is exciting. But if you're curious as to what this is, that's what it is. The other day I was having a conversation about my minimalistic quest with landscapes because David is always hearing me complain every time I paint something, it's not coming out right. I talk to him and I complain, I vent, and I'm like, why can't I get this? Look at it, why? Be brutally honest, tell me what's wrong with it. He's so nice. Anyways, basically he said, think of it this way. This here is boring and extreme minimalism. And this here is, let's say, realistic work, like with more details or more intricate. And you're trying to get to here in your mind, but you're never quite getting there. You're always more here on the too much detail side. So he said, what if you just go super boring? Just give yourself the goal of going to the most minimalistic, boring place and let the painting breathe for a while before trying to finish it. Because one problem that I have is that I'm trying to finish the painting in one go, but very often I need to let it sit for a day or a few days, sometimes a week, just to make the right decisions. Most times that I've tried to finish a painting in one sitting, I went overboard. I should have stopped like 70% of the way, but I felt at that point that it wasn't quite there yet, and I kept going, and then made it worse, or just added stuff that I should not have added. It's a common problem. So if I make it super boring, super minimal, let it simmer, I could get back to it later on and see what are the few little finalizing touches that it needs, like the very few brush strokes that it needs just to get it there instead of going overboard. So that's my plan. Maybe making a few unfinished paintings and let them breathe a little bit. Let's try that. I'm done rambling. Let's paint.
She probably peed on the floor. Oh no! Oh no! She peed on Lennox's bed. She peed on Lennox's bed.
Let me go through where I'm at and what I've done so far to catch you up. Remember I was talking about the 3 dials? I'm sure there's more, but I'm focusing on 3 dials, like color, saturation, and color darkness or lightness. And then I was talking also about texture and then composition. Right now I dialed down the color saturation and color darkness. I took quite a bit of time mixing colors, doing color swatches, and drying my paint to make sure that once it's dried, it's not too dark, too saturated. I started off with this green here, and although it wasn't too dark, I felt like the saturation was too intense, so I added some black to it, all the way down to this one where it was a lot more grayish, but then it became a bit too dark. I wanted to keep the colors airy and light as a first layer. So I added some white to that mix that was more grayish, and I came to this green here. I also used an out of the tube green that I really like because it's very neutral, even though it's very dark. It's Hooker's Green Deep, and I added a bit of white to that one. And I started a first layer of 3 paintings, 2 of which are pretty similar. It's my lightest green, and I decided to use my darker green as a first layer on a 3rd painting. The plan for this is to go from light to dark, adding darker colors, but starting from a light layer, and here the opposite. I want to see what the result is and how the process feels. And for this one, I'm just gonna be a little bit more spontaneous and not analyzing the process too much, just be more spontaneous for that 3rd one. And I'm keeping in mind that thing where David was telling me, go extreme minimalism, where you feel like the painting is not finished, it looks unfinished. That's my goal right now, to keep things super boring and unfinished and extremely minimal, but still work from my reference photo. So putting in some trees, a bit of foliage, but keep it really boring and unfinished. Is it crazy to say that I don't like green? Like, I want to paint landscapes, but I'm not a fan of a blue sky and green fields. It's not appealing to me, so does it mean I have to paint only like sunsets or night sceneries or winter scenes or fall where everything is more golden and brown? Or do I paint from reference those places that I care about but reinvent the colors altogether? I don't know. Okay, right now I'm at the position where if I were to keep going, usually I would feel like, okay, now let's do some texture in the grass in the foreground because that's what's on the reference photo. The tree line is done, but I feel like the painting is missing something. And this is exactly where I should be stopping, pausing, letting it rest, and sleep on it and go back to it with a fresh pair of eyes tomorrow. Let me show you where we're at. I worked on 3 paintings. Let's do the darker at the end. So there's 2 that are pretty similar. For this one, I didn't do too many shade variation in the tree line and this foliage line. I did give it a little bit of fuzzies at the edges to mimic grass. There is some kind of variations here in the foliage and this fuzzy stuff here. The second light green here is very similar, but I kept the tree line even more minimal. There's a few variation in color, but no texture whatsoever. Then we have the dark one. I did pretty much the same thing, but when I'm looking at the dark versus the light, I think I'm liking the light better as a base. But obviously it's gonna change. Everything's gonna change once I add more stuff. Right now, if I look at the painting, I'm not happy with it. I'm not satisfied because it feels unfinished. But how do I finish it? That's a question. I'm gonna let it simmer. We'll see. I was thinking also that maybe the problem for this specific painting is that the reference photo, it might be a little bit bland composition wise. There's no there's not much depth to it because it's like a flat landscape with a flat tree line going, like splitting the image in the middle. So maybe my reference photo should be a little bit more dynamic if I'm gonna paint something super minimal. Food for thought. Right? But at the same time, I don't agree with myself because the painter that I was talking to you about, he has a lot of these types of landscapes, but he makes them interesting. So no excuse, Syndia, make it interesting. I did one that is super minimal, but I wanted like a fun, easy painting where I wouldn't have to struggle with color. David is singing. I wanted a super easy painting where I could finish it fast and be happy with it. I think I achieved it. It's just a sky with a few birds. It's super minimal, but I like it. I think with a black frame or maybe a light wood colored frame as well, maybe that would look nice. Very minimal, and I love it. The little birds are imperfect, but I really don't mind it. There's wild geese here that pass over my house every season to go to the south when winter's coming, and I caught a whole bunch of them with my phone, and the photos came out really nicely, so that's what inspired me to paint these. I like an airy painting like that. Also, the notes of the day. Remember, I was talking to you about trying to enjoy the process more and trying to listen to how I'm feeling while I'm painting and pausing to be like, what am I feeling right now? Am I liking what I'm doing? I'm keeping a little journal of my thoughts. I was talking about that in the last vlog if you missed it. These are the thoughts for today. What I was surprised about was that I kind of enjoyed mixing colors, surprisingly, because I gave myself the goal of just finding a green that would fit what I was looking for, which was a light green that I didn't dislike. So I took my time, did swatches. I actually enjoyed observing the color change as I added more black, more white, more of different shades, and trying to swatch them, waiting for it to dry. Because I wasn't rushing myself and I wasn't rushing through the process of finding the right color to get to the painting so that the painting was done, I found mixing color a lot more enjoyable, which is good. All right, I'm stopping for today so I can come back tomorrow with a fresh eye on these paintings and see if I could finish them somehow. I don't know how I'm gonna finish them because I haven't found the magic recipe so far. Remember, I've been painting this 5 different times now, or 6. Don't like this. Don't like this. Don't like that. So I'm waiting for something magical to landed to my brain. All right, see you in a few. I'm back. Good morning. If you hear some sounds in the background, David is singing. It happens. Let's enjoy it. This is my reference photo. In the foreground, there's a little bits of flowers. There's a lot of texture, but I don't want to do texture because we all know what happens when I try to do texture. It doesn't work. So I do like the flowers. How do I translate this on this, but keep things streamlined, minimal, and nice? This painting is a study of that painter that I keep mentioning that I really like. I took one of his paintings that I thought was very interesting and I tried to reproduce it for my own knowledge of understanding what it is that he does that makes it so beautiful, although it being very, very simple but striking, but like effortless, you know? So I tried studying it, but if I look at his painting, there's a focal point in the horizon, right? And a few things are happening. There's some transparencies, there's different pops of colors, but everything else is focused on this nice shade of blue. So if I go back to my painting, maybe focusing on things in the horizon, like adding a bit more color here might be interesting. Also, since I do love those little flowers in the foreground, maybe finding a way to render the flowers in a minimal way that wouldn't be overpowering. I don't want those flowers to take over the entire painting, you know? So I'm gonna take this one, my least favorite one, and I'm gonna try to implement one or two of these ideas. And maybe as I'm working it, more things will come to mind, hopefully. I'm gonna get to work, then we'll talk about it. All right, I like what I've done so far. Now I'm at the point where I want to do a few flowers in the foreground. I want to do speckles. I don't want to do too much, but my instinct wants me to go here. It's a hot peach color and I would want to speckle some flowers in this corner and at the bottom here. Because I'm looking at this and I feel like it looks kind of monochromatic. It's only green. I want a little punch. If you put a pop of color on more bland colors, it makes it interesting, you know. That's where my gut feeling, not my gut feeling, my natural instinct is going. But I don't think I should do that. I should go in a different way that I wouldn't normally go into to try other ways, right? To keep things minimal, keep the color dial way down. So I think what I'm gonna do is white and maybe a little bit of soft yellow or cream. I'm gonna resist the urge to go hot peach or a bright banana yellow or even hot pink. I thought of all those things. Let me splash some flowers and see what it does. It's been a few days. I worked really hard on all of them. Let's talk about the dark one first. I tried keeping the dry brush texture that I had gotten in the horizon, which I really liked. And in the foreground, whatever green planes I was creating, I tried to keep things very smooth and blended and not create too much texture. I think I could have taken a wider brush, especially in the foreground, where there's little marks of variations of greens creating that illusion of foliage. I think it would have been nicer to have it even cleaner in that spot. I would say this band here, and even maybe here, I could have created planes that were smoother and big wide brush strokes. But overall, I'm not disliking this. I love the bushes that I created in the foreground. Remember the other painting where it was a big old mess that I created, like too much foliage? Now I used a really big brush, this brush. I used it in wide intentional brush strokes to create bushes. I feel like it's a type of mark that I want to keep and bring into other paintings because it's giving what I want. I wanted bushes, but I didn't want them to be overwhelming, and this is just right. I'm excited about that specific mark. I'll remember this. In this painting, what I love the most is really the dry brush strokes in the foreground, like this little band here of darker green with the little dry marks. I think that's really nice. And if the rest would have been like a wider, uniform shade of intentional planes, kind of like this, but better colors, I think it would have been perfect. Also, I made a mistake, as in there's spatters that went into the sky, like a green stain in the sky, and it forced me to create white on white clouds, and I love it. I love the way I put like really thick white paint, just suggesting clouds, and the fact that it's white on white, I'm really liking this. And it's a way that I would like to explore skies. Maybe not white on white all the time, but I could do a really light gray or light blue sky, barely any pigment, and creating clouds like that, globs of paint in a minimal way. It makes it super interesting, but not overwhelming. And I don't get that super blue sky with the green fields, you know? I don't love that. Now, the light green painting. It was kind of nice at some point, but I went overboard and I overworked it. It happens. I tried my best not to do it, but I kind of did it. And then I tried to reel it back by blending things again. And it didn't quite come together, but it really is an improvement from the boring, bland painting and this mess. It's a big improvement. Much like the other one, I like the foliage and the dry brush strokes that I created in the horizon. So this is telling me that if I have like a focal point in a painting where there's more things happening, in this reference photo, it was the tree line. Obviously, it was the darkest, most appealing element in the photo. So I can get away with having more of a texture there because that's the focal point. I think the problem comes when I create too many focal points. So dry brushing and a bit of texture localized in one spot in the painting is interesting to me and doesn't feel overwhelming. So I can keep that in mind. And the rest of it could have been a big blob of like one color. I think it would have been interesting. If you compare both, if I had worked a little bit more texture here to create a gradient from the super dark to the super light and have it a little bit more like this, but kept everything else the same color at the bottom, I think it would have worked. I did a bit of texture in the foreground. I was trying to do this, but in a more subdued, controlled way. I didn't use hot pink or hot peach. I kept it to what I was saying. I think I like it. I'm not 100% sure on my opinion, to be honest. Maybe you could tell me what you think. It is texture, but it's not overpowering, and because the colors are soft, it gives a little point of interest. I don't know. I have to let it simmer, and it's something that I might use in the future. I'll probably know in a couple of weeks when I lived with the painting longer. And remember that messy painting that I really disliked? On a whim, in the middle of my painting session, while I was working on this one, I just grabbed that painting and I tried a few things on it too, just because I had ideas that I wanted to try, but I didn't want to be too bold with this one because I wanted to not ruin it. I slapped on a whole plane of uniform green in the foreground, getting rid of all that ugly texture, and I reworked this plane in the horizon with different shades of green, and this is the most successful way I worked out of the three I find in the horizon. I just love it. I love the brush strokes with the subtle color shifts, and I like that there's no other colors. There's just a big block of color in the foreground. I like everything about this. And then I tried a little bit of texture. I wanted to create flowers, and I used the spatter technique to create flowers. David says that it doesn't necessarily read as flowers. I think I like it on this. It's pretty bold, but because there isn't much happening here at all, and this is all very subtle, I think it works. It's a lot of movement. Maybe I could have been a bit more subtle in my spatters. That could be something to remember, you know. Less of it, but I think it works there. I have favorite elements in each of these three paintings. I like that this one is lighter. It gives that airy, calming feeling that I enjoy. This one is a bit darker, but I love the way I work the fields in a minimal way in here more than here. Love the white clouds and love these bushes for this painting. And the greatest news of all is that this painting, which started out being my favorite out of the three that I was gonna work on, ended up being my least favorite of them all. It means progress. Something that's telling me that I'm liking it is that I would not want to sell this, but I would be happy to sell this, you know? That's a big sign that it's telling me that I achieved something. Now, all I gotta do is find a way to not put so much green in the landscape. It's a detail. We'll figure it out later. And this morning, look, I picked the very last flowers in my garden for a nice bouquet. It's so beautiful. This color scheme is very inspiring. The very gentle yellow, like almost cream, mixed with that warm baby pink and the silver gray. I'm gonna take a photo of this for color inspiration. Let me know your thoughts about these, if there's something that you saw I didn't talk about, or if you have a favorite one or recommendations on how I could improve. I'm all ears because I want to get this minimalist landscape thing. If you're still here, you are my superstar. Give me like some kind of heart emoji in the comment. I will reply to you. Thank you so much for watching this super long, super chatty vlog. You really are a superstar and I'm very grateful for you. If you want more inspiration, here's a shorter one and I will see you in just a few days for another one. Thanks.